Okay, this is the Vercel website at vercel.com. One of the things I like most about this website is that the visual style is simple and vaguely technical. And I think that's a perfect visual style for a company like Vercel because actually they're running in the background. They're not the face of the web, but they sit there in the background, hopefully make it simple for you to run the website, but they're not getting in the way or making themselves known. And this visual style suits that quite well since these lines make it vaguely technical and the whole style is quite simple. So they've matched it well with their brand. Of course, one thing that's not as simple or sort of doesn't fade into the background as much is this centerpiece in the hero section made of these colored lines. And I like this because the hero often is the right place to have a centerpiece to grab your attention, to pull you into the product. But I also like it here because actually they've made something that feels quite complex out of something quite simple, which again represents Vercel as a hosting company quite well. Because you can see here, this is just a collection of lines and they have this sort of color effect applied. But beyond that simple construction, they've got this sort of undulating, shifting color effect, which is a way to take it up a notch in terms of visual interest, but still lets you keep it quite simple in terms of the structure. So that's a nice effect. And it suits the rest of the visual style well, even though it's a more bold centerpiece. I would like to point out, this is not new, but Vercel have essentially adopted the triangle as their logo. You can see it in the logo in the top left and in the center of this centerpiece. And also in this button here. One of the best things about having such a simple brand motif is that you can use it in many different places as they're showing you in this hero section. So if you can find quite a simple shape that helps represent your brand or your website, that's great because you can use it in all sorts of places. It's suddenly more versatile. You can do more things with it. If you have a more complicated logo, maybe a complex shape, suddenly you can't do it at smaller sizes, or maybe people can't tell what it is at a smaller size. So that gets harder, but the triangle, I think, represents the brand and suits the visual style of this new website quite well. This website has this subtle visual structure, so you can see these lines running down that mark out the margin. They show you things like the spacing between blocks or between sections. They show you columns when a section is split into columns. And visible structure is one of my favorite patterns for visual design. I quite like it here again because it reinforces that technical aspect of the brand, but subtly. So to me, it feels like a blueprint almost, like you draw, a blueprint of a building or something, but it's subtle enough that it sort of fades into the background and lets the content shine. And so again, that matches this brand really well of simple in the background, and it matches the technical nature of the product. But it also makes things, easier to understand the structure of. So you can tell that this is supposed to be 3 columns, not just because of the content in it, but because it's split into these 3 columns by these lines. So that makes the structure of the layout of the website immediately easier to understand. And that's always good for when you want to lead someone through this sort of visual journey, give them more structure to lean on. One of the things that I like that the simple visual style helps with are these small crosses or plus signs, essentially, that pick out the corner of things. There is actually one down here in the center, but generally they're used on the corners of important things. So you can see one top left of this hero section and then bottom right of this hero section. These are essentially sparkle effects like you'd see in a cartoon or something, shining off the corners of things. But Vercel has chosen such a simple visual style that they can use an even simpler effect to get the same sort of result. Again, this suits this sort of blueprint-like visible structure, technical approach, and the visual style is so simple that something as simple as this can still help to pick things out. So because you've brought the visual style back down that spectrum to really simple, what you have to do to make things stand out is even smaller, even simpler. You can do less, and that's a great place to be in because you don't have to put as much effort into making everything stand out. Another example of this is that when they want to highlight something like this sort of screenshot, these little messages, this chart, they can just use white as a background color. And most people think of white as a very plain thing. But because they've chosen this off-white, this light gray background, suddenly standard white becomes a way to highlight things. This is not true of most websites. You know, most websites, if you use standard white as the background, suddenly you have to think of something different to make a box like this chart box stand out. So that's great that they've chosen a simple enough visual style that just white on its own will help to pick things out. And the last thing I want to point out is this 99.99% uptime. This is a bit out of place compared to the rest of the website because you don't really see this. They've picked this out in a way out of lines because it's different from the rest. It really stands out to you. They've also used these sparkle effects again. And so this small box with not much effort has the effect of really standing out when you scroll past because you're not used to seeing this style. But the one thing it does echo is the lines used in the hero section. So it still has this sort of basis in the visual style. They're calling back to something else. They're keeping everything consistent, but they've used it sparingly so that it's in the hero section to really grab your attention. And then the next time they want to really grab your attention, they're using it to let you know that they've got very high uptime stats. So I quite like that because they could have kept using this throughout the website and sort of made it less effective over time, but they kept it for when they really wanted it.